All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is David Donaldson with the National Center for Grow Your Own. I'm super excited to be hosting today's event with our good friends over at the Center for Public Research and Leadership, otherwise known as CPRL, at Columbia Law School. As far as today goes, we're going to have time at the end for questions, and I hope folks will feel free to submit questions throughout, and we'll come to those at the end. But really excited today to talk about how folks can leverage educator certification and licensure, as well as grow your own or registered apprenticeship type programs to be able to truly push for and lead in developing diverse and robust educator workforces. And it won't just be ourselves at National Center for Grow Your Own or at Center for Public Research and Leadership talking, because one of the things about our two organizations is we have some amazing leaders in common, and that we get to both support awesome work happening in Connecticut. And so with that, I'm actually going to ask all of our panelists to turn on their screens and join me. Thank you so much. And so we're going to kick things off. And Dr. Tucker, there we go. Want to make sure we have the whole game being here, all of our all-stars. We're going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves, name, title, organization, as well as one or two sentences on your background and what brings you to the conversation today. So Liz, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Thanks so much, David, and hi to everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Liz Chu. I'm the Executive Director of CPRL, Center for Public Research and Leadership at Columbia University and Columbia Law School specifically. I'm a former teacher, middle and high school, trained teachers for a number of years, a researcher. I've been at the center since 2014. And I feel really passionate about this topic because I believe all of our kids deserve excellent teachers, and all of our teachers deserve a profession that recognizes the value they bring to school. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Liz. And one thing that Liz left off is she used to be my boss, and she's amazing. So I always say, well, what's the number one reason anybody leaves a job? Because of who they work. It's because of who you work for. And that is not the case with Liz. I am so grateful to be able to continue a professional relationship in a webinar like this today. So shout out to Liz Chu, and you all are going to see how amazing she is over the course of this webinar. Dr. Tucker, let's go next to you.
Thank you so much, Dave, and I'm so happy to be here today. I'm Shawana Tucker. I'm the Chief Talent Officer at the Connecticut State Department of Education. I've been in this position about 3.5, almost 4 years. Prior to that, I've worked in several school districts within Connecticut. I've worked at the University of Connecticut in the Educational Leadership Department, and I began my career many years ago at the U.S. Department of Education in Washington. And this work is very near and dear to me. I've been entrenched in it for many, many years, and I'm happy to finally see some progress and movement forward to address the diversification issues that we've been tasked with.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for folks to hear about the great work happening at the Connecticut State Department of Ed under your leadership, Dr. Tucker, and your amazing team and senior leadership as well. Director Birch, let me turn it over to you to round us out.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Todd Birch. I am the State Apprenticeship Director for the Connecticut Department of Labor. I also have the great honor of being the national president of the National Association of State and Territorial Apprenticeship Directors. I have 33 states and territories as my constituents. I see and the members that we have joining us today, my good partners from the U.S. Department of Labor. Myself, I'm a former educator. I was an apprentice of 4 different occupations as well. And I also am glad to give a shout out today to a good friend of mine, a peer educator, Carolyn, who is the 2023 State Teacher of the Year, and a good friend of mine. So that being said, thank you for having me, and looking forward to the conversations.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. So before we get into policy solutions, why don't we first hear from Dr. Tucker and Director Birch about the need to rethink policies and programs that shape our educator workforce. So Dr. Tucker, let's start with you. You're the Chief of Talent, my favorite position, not that I'm biased or anything like that. For those who don't know, I was the chief of talent in Tennessee, so I love Dr. Tucker's work so much. Dr. Tucker, what needs are you seeing in your state? Why think differently about educator workforce policies and practices?
Sure. What we are seeing is number one, the need to diversify our educator workforce. In our prior State Board of Education strategic plan, there was a goal that was set for us to increase the diverse number of educators within our state to 10%. I am very pleased to state that we are now at 11.2%. And while we applaud that achievement, there is still much work to be done because the demographics in Connecticut have changed over the years. And our student demographic is at about 52, 53% diversity. So we still have a lot of work to do because we really want more diverse teachers in our classrooms with our diverse student body. We are also trying to address staffing shortages, specifically in our alliance districts. And for those that don't know, those are some of the neediest districts that we have here within Connecticut. We're also looking at what we consider to be barriers that may affect those who are trying to enter the field of education, and looking at those individually to see if we might be able to peel them away or make policy changes to impact those barriers and remove them. What I will say is this past session that we had here in Connecticut, while we have a lot of new initiatives that we've rolled out, to me, it was truly the year of education. We finally received a lot of financial resources from this last legislative session to support many of the programs and the initiatives that we have tried to jumpstart here within the talent office to change and diversify our educator workforce in Connecticut.
I love that. The year of education. I always say, not I always say, but you always hear that saying that show me your budget and I'll be able to show you your priorities. So really cool to hear that Connecticut is prioritizing education. Todd, we've talked a lot about how this work is personal for you based on your wife's experience. At the same time, the work, or should I say, we're going to hear more about it, the collaboration between labor and education in the teacher space is still relatively new. What is your perspective on how aspiring educators have been prepared historically?
I think they've been prepared historically quite well. A lot of people want to be teachers, and the educators that are in the post-secondary arena have done quite well. The issue, as my good friend Dr. Tucker has alluded to, is a financial barrier. It's the same thing with nursing. It's the same thing with manufacturing, electricians, plumbers, the whole 9 yards. It is wildly expensive to become a teacher. Wildly expensive. Now, having this conversation about registered apprenticeship for teaching makes probably the most sense in actually what I call breaking a historic cycle of poverty. As my electricians and my plumbers and my registered nurses all get paid as apprentices to hone their craft that they're mentored by a mentor, why not teachers, student teachers for that matter? Why has it been an accepted practice that you have to be indebted to actually have the privilege of being a student teacher? Not only do you have to pay for your 3 or so college courses, but at the entire time of an entire year of student teaching, you're not being paid. How can we do that in a society now? So it's very personal to me because it happened to my wife. Luckily, I was able to get her through that process. She went down and took a different tact after getting her teacher degree, her teacher's master's, and she became a special ed paraprofessional because it's very near to her heart. But that's the cooperation and partnership that we've had on a national basis. It's high time you got paid to student teach as opposed to paying for such privilege. So, thank you, David.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate that. It's such every time I hear you speak, it just the passion comes out about the inequity and injustice. Like, and if we're going to ensure every child has not only the teacher they need and deserve, why are we preventing individuals like your wife and others to become a teacher? It just doesn't make any sense. You both have made obvious the need for change. Couldn't be clear. And I would almost say the opportunity for change couldn't be clear as well. So we're going to turn to a discussion on how we might address some of these challenges. I'll first share a little bit about overview of the work we do at the National Center for Grow Your Own before I turn it over to my dear colleague, Liz, to speak about the incredible research and work that they do on a bunch of things, but specifically for today, educator certification. So Miles, if you wouldn't mind sharing the slides. Perfect. So at the National Center for Grow Your Own, we always like to start with just a clear definition of what Grow Your Own means. Because if you ask 100 different districts about their Grow Your Own program, you'll get 100 different answers. So we like to say it's a clear, articulated pathway for an aspiring educator to become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. And so if you notice, there's two things we always like to point out with that definition. There's no age on there. We could be talking about a 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, or 65-year-old. And there's also no educational background on there. It could be somebody who already has a bachelor's degree, somebody with an associate's, or somebody with no college at all. The point is we want to be able to identify folks who have a heart for kids who would make an excellent teacher if given the opportunity. I think Todd said it best. Educators have been prepared well overall, and Connecticut is a leading state in that work. It's more about the access, the opportunity for folks to be able to get that preparation and support. And so in our work, we kind of have, when we work with the state or a district, they're either going to start at one or two entry points, either step one, or they actually move over to step 4. Step 1 is when somebody doesn't yet have any type of program in place. They don't have a clear partnerships. So we'll work with them to say, hey, what is the need that you're trying to identify? Are we working to identify folks based on resignations, retirement, turnover data? And then from there, okay, now we know we need special ed teachers. So now we know we need math teachers. Great. Let's see what the appetite is for folks who already work in our schools or are part of our broader school communities, or do we need to go external as well to recruit folks for those needs? And so once we start to engage folks to say, okay, all right, I want to be a teacher, great. Do you, now we know that you want to be a teacher, but do you want to be a teacher in the subject areas that we have open? Okay, great, yes, awesome. Now we need to get an idea of your educational background. Are you somebody with a bachelor's, an associate's, or nothing at all? Because that's going to inform our work now in step 2, where we deal with CFOs. And usually, and I'm not going to call on Dr. Tucker to share her experience. I would never do that. But as someone who has worked for 15 years in government, and I don't anymore, I've dealt with my fair share of CF no's and had to turn them into a CF yes. And so we help our states or districts identify the various funding sources that can be leveraged to help pay for these opportunities for folks. That can pay for the individuals like Director Birch's wife to get their degree and for the opportunity to be a teacher. From there, we develop the RFP process. Now that we've identified funding, okay, this RFP will be searching for ed prep providers who can prepare special ed teachers. And we've identified a group of folks who all have their associates who want to be a teacher. So we need a 2-year pathway into this work. We then work to engage various ed prep providers to say, okay, who's interested in this opportunity? How can we create that demand that's out there? And the irony is that right now, we're so sometimes focused on our teacher shortages that we forget if you have teacher shortages, likely the enrollment in the ed prep providers is low as well. So they need us just as much as we need them. And so by running this RFP, you get multiple ed prep providers being able to basically compete. And thus, that's a way to not just drive down costs, but also potentially use it as an opportunity to raise the bar on what you want to see, how folks are prepared. Maybe you want the ed prep providers to demonstrate how they're training people in the science of reading or high quality instructional materials. There's a lot of different opportunities that we've seen. We've also had states include in there. We want to see how folks are being trained in culturally responsive pedagogy. So there's a lot of power there when a state leverages its economies of scale. And in this last step, and I'm not going to take away Connecticut's thunder, but as I shared earlier, Connecticut's a great leader in teacher preparation. So they've already had a lot of great partnerships in place with their ed prep partners. So in that case, if you already have, a group of districts and ed prep providers identified, great partnership, everything's working well, then let's take advantage of this new registered apprenticeship as well to not only codify the high quality aspects of the program, but also to now tap into labor funds that can actually be used to help grade with, whether it's your Title II, your Title III, your IDA, Perkins 5, ESSER funds, state general funds. I could go on and on and on. There's more stuff we have on that we can talk about later. But taking advantage of this apprenticeship opportunity, and again, don't want to steal Connecticut's thunder, but as shared earlier, great collaboration between the State Department of Ed and State Department of Labor in Connecticut, that they're just doing some really cool work. Next slide, Miles. And so an example of some work that we have done is within Houston, Houston Independent School District. So we were able to work with them to launch a competitive grant. And in that case, they chose to invest $1 million, 10 grants of 100K each. And their folks ended up, it was candidates who all had an associate's degree. And again, what's great about this work is you can customize it. You could only be serving folks who already have a bachelor's. You could be serving folks who have no college at all. The point is it's grow your own. It's your own. It's customized to your needs. And these were the needs that Houston wanted to fill. And so they highlighted certain endorsement areas that they were also looking to specifically fill. But by leveraging this competitive grant process, we were able to get multiple ed prep providers to bid and to compete. It's kind of like real estate. There's a home for sale, and there's a lot of potential buyers out there. You got to do your final and best offer at the end. And so in this case, we were able to drive down the cost of a degree to just under, as you can see, $7,200 per degree. So for $1 million investment, they were getting 133 teachers out of that. If you were to give 133 people $7,200 coupon to a university, I guarantee you a university would say, oh, that's cute. This might pay for a semester. You know, so it's this idea of leveraging your economies of scale can really drive down costs. And this is all prior to now getting Houston's program registered for apprenticeship. So they have not even tapped into labor funding yet. And in Houston's case, it might actually end up driving the cost down for the district down to only $1,200 per person by accessing around $3,000 per year for apprenticeship. And so just broader now, scaling back out, we're incredibly proud to have run a free network called the National Registered Apprenticeship and Teaching. This is our state network, of which we're so grateful to have Connecticut be a member of that group. We originally started with 7 states in August of last year, and now this is our latest update, 31 states plus. We actually also have District of Columbia. We just added Arizona and Oklahoma, and we'll be adding 3 more states very soon. And we also offer a similar network for school districts as well. The point is we want to show how this work can be replicated, whether you're suburban, urban, rural. I know this is a passion of CPRL as well. All kids benefit from educator diversity, period. And there's plenty of amazing folks throughout the country that would make an excellent teacher if given that opportunity. So we have the largest district in the nation of New York City Public Schools. And I think I saw our dear friend Amy Way on this call. They're doing incredible work. But we also have districts with 1,500 students in this. The point is this can be done anywhere. And that's really exciting to see. And then finally, before I turn it over to my dear friend Liz, we just announced with our friends at Deans for Impact a new network for ed prep providers as well. And so this list, I think, has from 17 different states. And our friend Patrick at Deans for Impact just informed me we have 25 more ed prep providers I think we're going to be adding as part of our second announcement. So I'm very glad we have a partner in this work, because if the state and district network wasn't enough, now doing an ed prep, but it takes a village. And I think you're going to hear more about how Connecticut's approaching this work. And we're so glad to have them in our state network as a lead example for this work. With that, we also just put in the chat, if you are a state, district, or ed prep provider interested in joining any of these networks, please reach out. There's a form. It's affordable for anybody, because if you didn't hear me earlier, each of these networks are completely free, no strings attached whatsoever when it comes to those. And so with that, I will add that as you can tell, these programs that we do, of course, sit within the broader state framework of educator certification and licensure. And frankly, again, now that I don't work in government, I can speak a little more freely. When I worked in Tennessee, I actually tried to do a lot of this work within the constraints of policy, but because things were denied by the state board, um, uh, basically, had to work around the system. And yet, that's why I'm so proud and inspired by the work of Liz and the CPRL team, because they've done extensive research and applied work in this domain. They've worked within the system, yet being entrepreneurs and innovators in the space. And so, Liz, I want to turn it over to you to talk about what you've learned in this space. Thank you, Liz.
Thanks so much, David. Yeah, it's so exciting to hear about all the innovations because, as David said, it fits so well within the work that we do about CPRO. We're so interested in how you can take some of the innovations and rewire the whole system so that you're making space both for those innovations, but you're also taking that spirit of innovation and equity and bringing it to the system itself so that people like Todd's wife and others can pursue the pathways that really sing to them and that also make a difference for our kids in classrooms. And so if you go to the next slide, thank you. We're Education Leadership Research and Policy Center housed at Columbia. We do lots of things, but like I said, we're very focused on sort of broader system restructuring so that our public systems provide the level of service that our kids, families, and communities deserve. If you go to the next slide, Miles, we have a long interest in educator certification. And this interest and our work in human capital, more broadly speaking, grows out of our deep relationships with communities and local education agency partners who, as Dr. Tucker and as Director Birch described, really need effective and diverse educators so that they all can thrive. And we're particularly focused on the fact that the way our human capital is spread out across our system, of course, the students who are most affected are students of color and those students who are coming from low socioeconomic status backgrounds. So we believe that it's essential that our educators have to be diverse, they have to be trained, they have to be treated as the professionals that they are and recognized for all of the successes and the strengths that they bring to the classroom. And that means we need to rethink the way a lot of our states focus on and provide educator certification. So to this work, we bring a really deep understanding of individuals' experiences navigating current laws and regulations, which in many states are very tangled and burdensome to make the way through. We bring a whole bunch of review of literature and deep knowledge base about the evidence that others have gathered about the way educator certification works. We're housed at the law school. We have a team of lawyers on hand, and so we bring a lot of legal analysis to the work that we do, as well as a set of guiding principles about what actually works for educators, kids in classrooms, so that we are orienting ourselves in a goal-focused sort of way for what works best for schools. And we document that work both in proposed solutions, comprised in draft statutes, as well as language that is more broadly accessible. If you go to the next slide, please. We have had the great opportunity to do a bunch of work with local systems in Connecticut and with the state agency too, as part of a commission that Dr. Tucker may speak about later. To that work, we bring the national landscape scan, as well as whenever we do work in a particular state or district, we do a lot of focused work with the stakeholders of that particular locality. In this case, that often includes people in the local education agencies, people who are in the educator preparation programs and pathways, and current and former education department leaders. Next slide, please. So when we think about sort of how does the system itself need to change if it is going to be improved, we think about these guiding principles that are so important. First, it's really important to pursue simplicity and inclusion wherever possible. As I said already, the systems that exist have become so tangled that it's very difficult for candidates to navigate the way through them. It takes a lot of time and effort on the state's part to shepherd people through those programs, and it's really hard that best meet students' needs. We also want to make sure that as we're pursuing that simplicity and that inclusive spirit, we are valuing our educators as the professionals that they are, seeing them, recognizing the fact that they're highly skilled, lifelong learners who are going to continuously refine their knowledge, talents, grow in their careers. And to that end, we need to be very thoughtful about career trajectories. So we need to think about the pathways that bring people into the profession, recognizing, as David already described, there are lots of ways that people come in to teaching. And then we need to think about the ways that folks progress through the profession as they continue to grow their craft. And lastly, we have to make sure that any changes that we introduce are evidence-based. And we need to take the things out of the system that don't have a strong evidence base backing them. If you go to the next slide. So there are a couple of things that we have learned about redesign in this particular area that are sort of broadly applicable across many states. One, there need to be streamlined, flexible pathways into the profession. They welcome people as they're starting their careers, whether that's people who are having their first job or people who are making a career change. The second thing is that the endorsements and the certification tiers need to support simplicity and clarity in the same way the whole system does. And they need to provide that flexibility for teachers and educators and the leaders themselves to meet students' needs and progress throughout their profession in ways that they deserve, given the professionals they are. And third, we need to make sure that we're maximizing the benefits to educators and minimizing the burdens to educators while relying on a strong evidence base as we think about trajectories for professional growth once you are part of the profession. Go to the next slide. So when we look across our states and we look at how people understand pathways into the profession, what we've realized is despite in many places there being lots of pathways that are presented or codified in the state framework, they're really just sort of like three broad buckets for how people think about you become a teacher. One is you could pursue some sort of traditional EPP or pathway experience. Two, you could choose some sort of accelerated certification pathway for a career changer. Or third, you might be someone coming from out of state. And what we've realized is that when you focus on these three pathways, you can introduce questions that you might ask and answer for how you can redesign for each of those pathways, how someone might enter the profession. So if you go to the next slide, the questions that we ask for each pathway, and of course this has to be particular to the local context, is, who's pursuing it? How might they become certified? How can you assure classroom readiness? And how is that change and improvement on the current system? And so for any given state or any given case, we're basically looking at the current system and how we answer these questions. Then we think about, given the principles that we already introduced and the evidence base that exists, what are other ways you might answer these questions to make sure that you're getting high quality candidates in classrooms on day one. Next slide. Sorry. Thanks, Miles. In many cases, the solutions that we propose really rely on pathway quality. So rather than putting sort of the burden on the candidate and sort of providing consequences to candidates, we think about how can you create pathways that make sure that everyone is ready when they graduate. So graduating from a pathway itself is a meaningful signal of readiness to teach. And that, when you take on that sort of pathway quality assurance, you're doing a lot of work thinking about, is there job aligned training? Is there evidence that program completers have demonstrated readiness? Are there ways that you can communicate pathway quality so that you can inform the decisions of people who are contemplating going into the profession and making that investment, even if it is a lower cost than it sometimes it is, any cost is a cost that people have to bear. And lastly, are you identifying opportunities through growth? And in the same way that we look to improve lots of other institutions, are we providing opportunities for those pathway programs themselves to work together and improve to meet the level of preparation that our teachers need? Next slide, please. When we think about endorsements, I've already covered some of this, but basically we're thinking about taking another look at endorsement breadth to make sure that we are not slicing and dicing up our teachers so that they are extremely limited in what they're able to teach, and that the system that we're creating can be adaptable and responsive to the changing environment and the uncertain environment that we live in right now. Go to the next slide. And the same thing I would say is true about certification tiers. So we're thinking about in any given state that we're working in, how can you make sure that the level of tiers that you have and the passage from one tier to the next is evidence-based. It's as simple and clear as possible. It's minimizing burdens on educator. It's maximizing their professional growth. And it's not becoming something that is actually going to essentially force people out at particular gateways. David, I will turn it back to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Liz. And so with that landscape set, excellent job. Super detailed. I wish knew you back when I was in Tennessee, but eventually our paths crossed. Let's turn back to our system leaders. Both Liz and I have the great fortune of getting to work with the Connecticut folks. And so we continue to be inspired and excited by the leadership of Dr. Tucker and Director Birch that they've shown. So Todd, let's start with you on this one. We know your motivation behind this work, but help us understand what this work looks like on the ground and what changes do you anticipate and what makes you excited about the direction Connecticut is headed in?
Wow, that's a lot in one question.
You got time. You got time.
I was very, not apprehensive, but extremely fearful when the U.S. Department of Labor announced the intent of registered apprenticeships for educators. It really scared me to death, rattled me to my core. Like, okay, how am I going to do this? Due to the fact that I've been involved in governance quite some time before I got the job that I have now. That being said, it does take a village. I have the State Department of Education, who is my sister agency and wonderful friends of mine. We've always collaborated on a lot of great things until this idea came about. So you have the State Department of Education that basically sets recommendatory policy and regulatory policy for the entire state of Connecticut. And in the state of Connecticut, we do not have county governance. We have 169 towns. We have well over 200 school districts, all independently run. That being said, when we went down this path, the State Department of Education and myself got together, the National Center for Grow Your Own, and said, okay, what are we going to do here? So we started our work to allow, as a policy, the districts to say, hey, if you want to go down this apprenticeship route, you might want to look into this. You don't have to, but this is what we're going to do. So now, if you really look at it, and what we're about to roll out, we're 99% of the way done with building our program here in Connecticut. You have State Department of Education. You have myself at the Department of Labor. You have both NEA and AFT, the two largest unions in the United States. You have two large cities, Waterbury, Connecticut, and New Britain, Connecticut, and they are going to be the ones that are going to be rolling this out. Now, everybody says, well, register apprenticeship. Look at the layers of it. State Department of Education, you have your local elected boards of education, you have your respective unions, you have your union, so you have a national, state, and local union. You have your locally elected board of education. They are the actual employers. So we're building a program for them, utilizing all our regulatory authority to go aside and say, you can do this because we have to grow our own teachers. We don't have them. Why do we have a diversification problem in our communities? It's a financial barrier. No question about it. As I alluded to earlier, we have to break that cycle. You saw that bucket, as Liz showed before, the traditional EPP, broken, absolutely broken system for a long time. There's a question in the chat, what forces that level of payment? Well, if you're a state and you're running a program and subsidizing it, I guess you get to tell the state entity, the state colleges, what to charge for tuition. But I'm not going to get into that. That's not my bailiwick whatsoever. It's gotten too wildly expensive to become a teacher. It's that simple. So by having these collaborations and these cooperations, we're about to roll out not only what we consider the only program in the country that not only the apprentices will be paid, their classes as when they're in their student teaching will be paid for as well. That's state funded. They will be a union member. This is the only post-baccalaureate or post-master's degree teacher apprenticeship program in the country that we can find so far. I've surveyed the entire country to say, what do you have? None of them, very few of them are being paid. to a certain level. None of them are union members at this point in time. So that being said, they're all going to be union members. So when they go through their student teaching, again, we're removing some of that financial barrier. At the same time, you're already in the district. Instead of leaving that district and, hey, you're done, your student teacher is over with, go get a job. You're highly recommended to stay in that district. So by opening and getting rid of some of those financial barriers, we're hoping that that is what is going to be the intent, is to actually diversify teachers new to the profession into the communities that they come from. So again, took a big village, but at least it was a good village. And they're all focused on one thing, is to actually create. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. It's been incredible to get to partner with you all. Team who has worked very closely on this Connecticut project, and also shout out to the Buck Foundation, which I know CPRL and we also have in common. So thanks to them as well. And another thing, Todd, you mentioned is, saw a question in the chat. Folks, please continue to submit questions in the chat. We're going to get to all them actually very soon. And so with that, Dr. Tucker, turn it over to you. Let's hear from you on both the apprenticeship piece as well as what changes you've made and anticipate potentially making when it comes to educator certification or licensure.
Sure. I want to speak a little bit broadly and hone in on several of the initiatives that we are implementing here. We look at this from what we call the Connecticut 616 Educator Pathway. So we're looking at and have started with Grow Your Own programs such as Ed Rising, which is our statewide Grow Your Own network, focusing on middle school students and high school students. And that program has grown. It's only been in effect for 3 years. Again, that program started with Buck Foundation funding, so we are appreciative to them for that. We now have state funding to go along with that to add to it. We've grown to 22 districts with over 500 students that are participating. So that's like part one with Grow Your Own. Then we've moved into funding that we have received out of this legislative session. We now have the Aspiring Educators Diversity Scholarship, which this is the first semester that this has been rolled out. We have been allocated $4 million this year, $10 million next year. These funds are specifically for diverse students who are going to school majoring in education who come from our priority school districts. They will receive $10,000 per year, $5,000 each semester for their tuition. So that is a big plus. I can tell you in the applications we have received and we're reviewing, we had more high school students applying for this that have not yet graduated than those that are in school. So the word is getting out about this. And that's a good thing because we will follow up with those that are graduating next year and hopefully we can fund their education as they enter their EPP programs. But this will be a big relief for our students who are currently enrolled, undergrad and graduate, in education programs. Also, we have, as a part of our pipeline, enhanced reciprocity. In 2022, April of 2022, we looked at how can we start to begin offering reciprocity here within Connecticut to, again, break down barriers for people that want to come to our state. We started with northeastern states, and we went from Virginia all the way to Maine, including the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. From April of 2022 up until now, we have over 800 new educators. We have issued over 2,100 certificates to those in other states. We are now in phase 2, which we will implement next year. And we are actually going to add on hopefully 10 additional states, 5 in the Midwest and 5 further down south. So we are expanding in that area. We have overhauled and in the process, our educator evaluation system, which will now focus on growth and development. That's been a 2.5-year process. Implementation will take place in the fall. And what's really exciting, 2 things. The work that we've been doing with you and Todd has been wonderful on our apprenticeship programs. We're very excited about that work because we are going to have 2 registered apprenticeship programs that will focus on 2 different populations. One will be our undergraduates who are currently enrolled in EPPs, who can earn while they learn, and we can support them throughout their work and time within district, get paid for student teaching, and they can take advantage of, many of them, the scholarship. So that will be a big plus for many of our students. And the second apprenticeship program through the Connecticut Teacher Residency Program are for those who are already in the workforce, who want to become certified and want to become teachers. So our thought behind that was we wanted to hit both pockets, both those in the pipeline and those who want to go into teaching and provide them with the needed resources that they need. So we're very excited about starting our program, piloting within 2 districts that are both alliance districts within our state, and they have a great need for teachers. And so one of the other things we listen to is the student voice. I spent a lot of time talking to students, staff members, those on the Teacher of the Year Council, gaining their feedback to kind of make sure, pulse check, are we on point with what it is that we are doing? And they are very, very excited about student teachers getting paid for their work. Because I've heard from them many times, I love what I'm doing, but at 3:30, I'm out the door because I have to run to my part-time job at Dunkin' or Starbucks because I need gas money, et cetera, et cetera. So this will help to release some of that pressure on them. And the other thing that we're very, very excited about in breaking down barriers, and Liz spoke to this, is we have convened here at the State Department of Education the Connecticut Certification Education Council, and that began in August. And the reason we have convened this council, very forthright and honestly, our certification regulations have not really been looked at and assessed since 1998. And as we all know, a lot of things have changed since 1998. And as a result of that, we kind of have layers on top of layers from different legislative sessions that have made our regulations very complex and complicated for people who really want to enter the teaching profession. So I am very thrilled that this council has been convened. We have all of the stakeholders at the table. We have CPRL at the table. We have our EPPs at the table, our unions at the table, K-12 districts, everyone who has a vested interest in really looking at and assessing what we currently have in place. Where do we want to go? How does this align with our teacher prep programs and CAPE standards? And we're at a point right now where we have our plan in place and what our goals are. And I think we're moving towards like a short term and a long term. And the short term would be we are looking to enact and make some changes in this upcoming session in 2024, but we know we can't do it all in this short time frame. We're also looking at plan B, which will be that long term that hopefully will happen within the next year to 18 months.
Yeah, but Dr. Tucker raises a very good point about people that have bachelor's degrees already that want to get into the teaching roles. Connecticut is and has been for a very long time. We are a defense manufacturing state. Always have been, always will be. We make things that fly in the air, go in the water. We invented the Frisbee, and we still are the home of the wiffle ball. You have to manufacture all of these. So that being said, people with degrees in manufacturing specifically know how to contextualize STEM education to that of manufacturing. So we need tech ed teachers horribly to be in comprehensive high schools and middle schools for that matter. And by having the wonderful partnership with the State Department of Education and looking at how this residency programs are going to happen, or these apprenticeship programs are going to happen to augment the availability of people that actually come from industry to become tech ed teachers to help grow our workforce, which we need 45,000 workers tomorrow in this entire industry. So that's like a lot of great creative things that we're doing again as a village and with our partnership to actually get this going as opposed to regulatory red tape. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Dr. Tucker, as you were speaking, the thing that kept reflecting on is that you need a raise, and then second, you deserve a vacation. I hope you have one coming. What a marathon. While you sprinted a marathon and probably like all throughout to get all that done. And I say that out of mutual respect as someone that has walked a mile in your shoes. That's well done. Want to highlight one other thing too, to specifically about just a very small piece. And Liz, if there's anything you want to highlight, I'll turn it to you after this, and then we'll open up to Q&A. Specifically around your Educator Rising work, we talked to, and I was just in Richmond, Virginia, presenting on Monday night to legislators there, and with dear friend, the new state soup there, Lisa Coons, who is a former coworker of mine, and she's doing awesome. And we talked about how so many of these high school based grow your own programs, and I get so frustrated because they take the thoughts and prayers approach. Thoughts and prayers that we're gonna help you do Educators Rising or get dual credit, dual enrollment, early college, and those are all good. But then you're gonna be on your own once you get your high school diploma, and you got to navigate getting financial aid and registering for your courses. And then, as Todd's talked about it multiple times, the best / worst part of all, continuing to pay tuition to a university to work unpaid as a student teacher. It makes no sense. Why would you get all these kids excited and invest in them while you have them, just to lose them across a leaky pipeline? That's the thoughts and prayers approach. Thoughts and prayers, they magically are going to come back to y'all. So to see that Connecticut is not just investing at the high school, but then now with the bachelor's pathway and the post-bachelor's pathway, you are not going to have that leaky pipeline, because there's a reason for me to sign up for this in high school, because there's going to be a way for me to get this degree for free and get paid for it while I'm doing it. My God, anyway, a little biased, but really love what's happening. Liz, I just want to turn it over to you if there's any other comments or points you want to make, and then thanks for folks who are submitting questions. We're going to dive into them after this.
Yeah, well, I'll just continue to heap on the praise. Thank you, Director Birch and Dr. Tucker, for your work. And I think just to put again the two pieces of work together that National Center for Grow Your Own and CPRL do, I think we're really thinking at CPRL about how to move away from outdated, inflexible legal systems that make way for the level of innovation and transformation that places like Grow Your Own, all of the programs that Dr. Tucker just described, they want to give birth to and help flourish in their states. And unfortunately, so many of our states have legal and administrative structure that those two things are going to come into conflict and butt up right against each other at some point. And so I just feel really excited about states like Connecticut that are both thinking, how can we get innovation off the ground, and how can we redo our system and our administrative structure so that the same way that we say, oh, it's been since 1998, people in Connecticut are not going to be saying, oh, it's been since 2024 or 2025 when they redid this, but they're thinking about how you actually can redesign the system to allow for the evolution, flexibility, local responsiveness, and evidence-based practices that we're going to need for our schools to not just be as good as they can be today, but be as good as they can be tomorrow and for all the days to come.
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate that. First question, Dr. Tucker, while you were speaking, we received this question. Somebody just wanted to know, is there any type of online resource to view your work and Connecticut's work with the middle and high school students, the programming you're doing, whether Educators Rising or anything else that would be related to what you shared?
Yes, we have an Instagram account, and we also have on our website, and the Instagram account, it's all under Connecticut Educators Rising, is actually run by the students, and they give you an update on all of the work that they are doing and plan to do. And I have to give a shout out. Yesterday, we had our fall professional development at University of Bridgeport, and we installed our inaugural student cabinet for Educators Rising statewide. So we have 6 young people who will be pursuing the field of education. They're all in high school and they're from across the state. And we're going to be working with them, and their coach will be working with them on on leadership, but we're also going to work with them on advocacy, because we found that that was one thing that was missing, and we heard from our young people. And so we want to make sure that they know how to advocate for themselves and advocate for the field of education moving forward. So yes, the information is there.
I love that. That was awesome. Thanks for sharing that. this is more of a comment, but I just want to highlight it because it comes from the godfather of teacher apprenticeship at the U.S. Department of Labor. Todd, try not to laugh. But Bill Krause, who for those who might not know him, teacher apprenticeship would not exist in the United States without Bill Krause. He was the deputy director of the U.S. Department of Labor, and when I was chief of human capital in Tennessee, it was Bill who single-handedly helped me when I got denied 3 separate times, both by President Trump and Biden. Yes, I am someone who's gotten those 2 individuals to agree to something, the denial of the applications that I wrote. But Bill, just want to read Bill's comment. He's just want to say he's so pleased to see the addition of how wages has opened that opportunity door for folks to become teacher. And what a difference it makes when you actually remove those financial barriers, which Todd's echoed so many times. It's so true. One question that we have, read aloud. Todd, you hit on this a little earlier. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak with it. I'll answer it as well, but I'll wait till other folks go first. What are ways in which ed prep providers have successfully lowered their costs or their cost structure without sacrificing quality? Would anybody like to take a stab at that before I chime in?
I think about the quality, what we're trying to do in the state of Connecticut, it's kind of unregulated on the EPP side when everybody does their student teaching. As far as, what the quality of their academics is. Just because we think that it's going to be a systemic approach to actually increasing quality by default, by saying this is an education program we as districts want you to provide to students, as opposed to, hey, here's your degree, you got taught right. That's for districts to go, well, okay, what was the actual quality of their program? They don't know. I think we, again, by going through this registered apprenticeship programming, setting the parameters of such, is going to be very helpful to the quality. As far as money versus quality, that's something for the universities to have a conversation about. I don't think that good things don't come cheap and cheap things don't come good. It's the old adage, right? So by state schools, and you're probably going to hear a lot of these conversations. I can't speak for the state of Connecticut on this one, but if you're a state school and you're trying to fix an issue in the state of Connecticut, the state schools being an entity, lowering those tuitions for the participants of this is probably a good way to actually diversify the education workforce, specifically in any state. So.
And what I'll say about that is we've taken a little bit different approach, and Todd is right. We cannot control the financial piece, but we have started having those conversations about 2 years ago with the Connecticut State College and University system around, number one, dual credit courses. So we now have 3 education-based courses that our high school students can take, and grants were sent out from the State Department this year for districts to take advantage of for dual credits. But those 3 education courses, if students in high school want to pursue education and they take those 3 courses, they will be accepted at the community colleges as well as at the EPPs. And starting, I think it was this fall, first generation students, college graduates, or those pursuing college, can attend community colleges in the state of Connecticut for free. So many of our students opt to take that route so that they can get all of their general ed coursework underneath their belt for free for those 2 years and then transition into EPPs. One of the other things I will say we've done for those that don't want to go that route and they want to go straight into EPPs, we've made those deans of education. We have our deans meeting quarterly. We've made them aware of the pipeline that we're trying to build, and what we can do is get the students to you, but then the question is, how are you going to support them both academically, financially, and socially? And so I will say that several of our universities have programs in between junior and senior year, so that they can become acquainted with what life is like on a college campus, and then offering them the supports once they get there to the college level. One of the things that we've been meeting about is that EdRising Collegiate has now merged with Aspiring Educators, which is run by CEA, so they're now one. And so we're really working to expand that at the college level to ensure that our students still have the resources and the supports that they need once they set foot onto the college campus. And they feel the support and they have the support to be successful.
Yeah, all great responses. Building up Dr. Tucker, your point about the community college. First off, community colleges are more diverse than our regular universities, so there's just a benefit there by tapping into them. But one of the things we've always done is, and we recommend it, but when I started in Tennessee, is yes, we had free community college, so why would I ever pay a 4-year university for years 1 and 2? And I get some people disagree with this, but English 101 is English 101. So if I have a chance to take advantage of it for free or, at a much reduced rate, why wouldn't I do that? And I say this is kind of might pick up on some passion. I'm a former college dropout who, when I did go back, I went to a community college and I know how people looked at me and, I'm not doing too bad now. And so it's really important to take advantage of community colleges. Other things, Todd, you hit on this, it's that economies of scale. You can do it with the state colleges. This is the money we have, or you can go broader than that via these competitive grants. But also, like, folks, if we're talking about folks who are educational assistants, paraprofessionals type folks in these programs, they're going to qualify for Pell. Very good chance they are, pending household income, if their spouse, makes a certain income or not. But also, we are talking about folks like my mom. Again, this works personal. My mom was my school cafeteria worker, but she also taught Sunday school and vacation Bible school for over 2 decades. You are talking about people who were never going to go to you in the first place. So it's bonus students. And honestly, we can just use this example of being on a Zoom. I get charged a fee to host this webinar, whether it's the 4 of us or the, 80 plus, 90 plus folks who registered, up until I don't know, 500 people. Point is, it's the same fee. So it doesn't hurt me if 10 people wanted to join. Yeah, we could have them. Adding an extra square to the Zoom, or adding an extra seat to a physical room doesn't make the costs are fixed on these things. So it's like just getting people to think different. Also, why are we being charged for football tickets or access to the gym? At Summit, there's a lot of fees that can be played with. And I'd finally recommend, we did a webinar with deans from public, private, and community colleges. It was our first webinar ever. Todd, that might sound familiar to you. You might have been on it. And my God, you got to hear these deans talk about ways they've reduced costs without reducing quality. Had just one more question. I'll answer it really quick. In the very beginning of this presentation, I gave an example case study out of Houston. Where did the $1 million come from Houston to invest in their program? Was not part 2 of it is, if philanthropy, how do they plan to sustain it? Wasn't philanthropy. It's about thinking differently, talking different with the CF no and turning him or her into a CF yes. If you have 10 teacher vacancies, you likely have $600, $700, $800,000 you can play with. Even if we just went with a $60,000 average teacher salary, which is low for Connecticut, I would assume. But you add fringe to that, all of a sudden, and if you're a district the size of Houston, you are huge. But the point is, even if you have 1 teacher vacancy, you have 60, 70, 80 grand that can pay for paraprofessionals, educational assistants, bus drivers, substitute, whoever it may be, people you've identified to get their degree. So just want to point that out. There is money. There is money. Arrested Development fans, there's money in the banana stand. Anyway, with that, I couldn't be more grateful to Dr. Tucker, Dr. Chu, and Director Birch for being here today. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your wisdom, and how you are contributing and leading to diversifying this profession, because that's what all kids deserve, a high quality teacher. And more kids deserve teachers that actually look like them as well. So with that, just want to say thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you to CPRO for co-hosting this with us. And I hope everybody has a good rest of their day.